Hi everyone, just a quick new update on how things are going with the CNC. I've been thinking a lot about fixtures. So now I'm just going to go through maybe a quick explanation of what I'm thinking and where I'm headed with my fixtures. So imagine this is your table and I've modeled up the stock that I'm going to cut out my blade from, for example. I've got some holes to hold it down and a reference hole, or maybe some of them, more of them reference hole, kind of doesn't really matter. And then from that, I've designed a fixture to create. So the first time I create this fixture, I'm going to be holding it down on my milling table and kind of clamping it in place and making a reference point. From there, you know, I might have drilled the holes or something already for holding it down, but once I reference it and have these holes in place, they're going to be relative to some reference point, say this bottom corner, and then everything else is going to be kind of relative to that point. While that's still clamped on the table the first time I make it, everything's going to be fine. You know, I can create a part on there, and if I flip it over, you know, those reference holes are going to be the same no matter what. There's not going to be any alignment issues or anything like that. So that all works fine. The issue I'm kind of grappling with is that once I take it off and put it back on, it might be aligned with some rotation, or it might be just offset by an amount. So obviously, you know, I'm going to be trying my best to align it as best I can. But what I've been thinking about is how do I determine that it is in the same location? So, you know, referencing off this corner, for example, if there's any rotation, that's going to be fine. But what I'm thinking of doing is putting some like another reference distance up here when I first create the fixture, so I can tell if this is up or down. Then even though these are going to be very close, this is going to be off because it's a long distance by an amount that's easier to determine. So what I was going to explain as well is like why that's important. So if I've got it offset and rotated, for example, when I take my blank piece of steel and hold it in the fixture, it's not going to be drilling these holes that where the fixture is located, but it'll be drilling the ones where it thinks it is, as in this original reference one, even though I've re-referenced it. But you know, hopefully that makes sense. So when I place that in and draw what might get drilled, this one might go, actually let's move it over a bit. This one might be here, this one's going to be here, this one's down here, this one's there, and that one's there. So relative to all themselves, that's fine. They're going to line up. You'll be able to put them in the holes in the fixture. And it doesn't really matter if that had been drilled previously or whatever. All those holes are relative to themselves. So, you know, that's going to go on and off the fixture without any problems at all. So you know, I could create a bunch of stock ready to then move on to the next step. From there, once it's in there, because it's held in place, anything that happens next is going to be, I guess, offset depending. So if I took the whole fixture off and that was fine, and then put it back on and it had a different orientation, for example, these are still going to screw down fine. And say we cut our part out now. So we cut our part out. Actually, that's going to be going to the original reference location. So let's say like that. So that's actually different from what's on the fixture because it's relative to the original reference rather than the way the fixture is actually being placed on the table. So now, if you compare the original design to what's been come out, it's actually offset because of that angle change or the displacement change. So that's kind of the first error. Now, if we go back to the table with our alignment issue still there, if I use these outside holes and flip it, you can see that that part is offset by a larger amount because it is referenced to these original holes. Hopefully that's showing up on the camera. Actually, let's just do it this way. So because those holes line up like that, this is now in the wrong location relative to those holes. If I had done it previously, that would be lined up fine. But because those holes are relative wrong to that, it's coming out offset. So then if I cut that out now, I would have double the error. You'd have the error this way and the error that way introduced. If I actually, in the first step, completely cut that out and use these holes as reference, when I put that on, now, even though there is still an offset error from here, the amount of error cutting it out the second time is only that offset error, not double. So that's the approach that I'm going to take, is cut the one side and create some new reference holes and actually cut it out completely, and then on the second side use those new reference holes every time I do kind of a part, and use those reference holes to reduce the amount of offset or rotation error that gets introduced. So hopefully that makes sense, and yeah, we can see how that would actually come out like this. So there's a lot less error if you swap them than if you do it referencing those outside holes. So that's my current theory. Hopefully it makes sense to everyone out there, and hopefully the next video you see is me actually creating some fixtures and making parts. Thanks for watching, and if you've got any ideas or comments on what might be a better approach, or if you think that's a good approach, let me know in the comments. Thanks.